Welcome to It's a Grand Life. Did you know that in the United States alone, 2.4 million kids are being raised by their grandparents or other family members other than mom or dad? 2.4 million. It's a Grand Life is a podcast for those grandparents and kinship caregivers who are committed to making a difference for those kids. Grand families are in every neighborhood, every city, tribe, and territory nationwide. If this is you or someone you love, this podcast is for you. Our goal is to offer hope and resources to help you. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us wherever you get your audio podcasts and leave a review. Every new subscriber and review helps us reach others that need assistance. Welcome to another episode of It's a Grand Life. Hello, my name is Craig Nash, and we'd like to welcome you to another It's a Grand Life. You're going to be so blessed today. We've got an advocate from Northern Michigan joining us, Deb Frisbie, who's been living the Grand Life for a long time and brings a rather scholarly approach to advocacy. She has, I don't know if you can see this at home, but Debbie has given me lots of homework to read about the grand families and the foster care situation that I'm really looking forward to getting into from a friend of hers named David Byrne. But Debbie, just like to welcome you to It's a Grand Life, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to just raise awareness for grand families all across Michigan, Northern Michigan, and the United States.
Well, we absolutely need it. And although this is a new process to me, I've only been part of really aware of what's been going on with foster care and grand families all across this country. But it's not a new program for you. You've been involved in advocacy for families and grandparents raising grandkids. And so tell us, how long have you been involved in the whole grand family situation, and how did you get into this, Debbie?
Yeah, so my advocacy work started way back when with my daughter, who had some mental struggles. And so I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, wow, my advocacy work goes way, way back. At the time, I was an employee at General Motors, and I thank goodness the family medical leave came into existence while I was working for General Motors, and my daughter became a juvenile diabetic at the age of 13. And so there were days where I just needed to stay home because we could not get her blood sugars under control.
Wow.
So I think about the advocacy work that started way back at the age of 13 for her. So fast forward, my daughter with her mental struggles and possibly an addiction at a very young age that we weren't aware of. So in 2003, I had our first grandson was born in 2000. And we watched that situation. She had moved to Florida, and that's where she met our grandson Richard's father. And so we just watched the situation. We had my dad and stepmother living in Florida who helped us keep an eye on the situation. Oftentimes my daughter, because of having bipolar, she would get angry, she would fly home. And so, we, urged her to, stay with us. She stayed with us at one point, long enough to finish her GED, because she dropped out of high school in her senior year with 3 months left to go.
Oh.
So anyhow, so in 2003, she came home. She had another baby in 2003 in July. She was living with us, and things were going really south. She was disappearing. She wasn't coming home. Strange people were coming into our driveway. We had things stolen out of our garage. So we finally had to, unfortunately, tell her that she had to leave. And so it was Christmas time. It was, we said, no, none of that's going to happen during Christmas time. And she was a scrapper. She was a fighter. And she said, you can't kick me out. I got kids. So,
That big trump card, right?
Wow. I think about the lengths that we have to go through and still love those kids, but not enable the situation to get worse. And, the kids were my priority at that point. She was an adult. And so, so we had to go to 63rd District Court. She was right. And we had to post an eviction notice on her bedroom door.
Wow.
And, it's so sad to think about this, but my mindset was, this is about the kids. And she wasn't a mother who was present. She wasn't a mother who was loving. And so we gave her some money. We brought her to a very decent hotel in Cascade, Michigan, and she had enough to get by for a while until she could find a job, which, she could have worked at a gas station, whatever. Within 2 weeks, she had found another boyfriend and was living in a little county not too far from us.
Wow.
And when that happened, she came back up the driveway with the police and said, give me my kids. And I was horrified.
Wow.
We didn't have a guardianship. We didn't have anything. And the police just said, hey, they're her kids. They have to go. I knew nothing about this gentleman she was with. I can't tell you the horror that came about that night in my heart, and the worry with a baby and a 3-year-old.
Oh.
And so, as
Debbie,
things turned out.
Can I ask you one question? You hit on something that I think, and I don't want to stop you here, but I just want you to comment on this because I think it's so apropos for grandparents who are just having this situation, their whole life change as they now start raising their grandkids. You said we missed the addiction, or we could have missed an addiction. I think my wife and I would say that's our story as well. And so if you speak to folks that are just starting out with their grand family journey, how do they not miss the addiction? I mean, are we just thinking that things are going to turn out okay? Then that's why we're not looking at this as critically as we need to. What would you say to that?
I think that you have to go with your gut. And if your gut, my daughter not only had juvenile diabetes, she had the bipolar,
Right.
She was diagnosed, she had so many, deficiencies that really were no fault of her own.
Right.
But, I think as, I guess, people who are going through it right now, we have to do our homework. We have to know what those signs look like. Are our kids twitching?
Right.
Do they have access? Who are they hanging around with?
100%.
We have so many tools at our fingertips to learn about addiction, and just at our fingertips to check who they're hanging with.
So would you say, Debbie, when if you suspect that if there's drug use, you could connect the dots and say there is possibly addiction, and you would say lean with that going in, looking back now. I mean, I wish I would have, that, we kept thinking of, oh, it's a weekend, social drug use or alcohol abuse or what have you, but it was a lot more than that.
Right. And I think, if, this started at a young age, and I think if we would have, and when we still had the authority to say, would you drug test her?
Right, right.
And, you don't want to believe that about, your kid who grew up in a home life and up in an area that we lived in. It's hard to fathom.
Right.
Because you're the only one that's going through it. And in the county that we lived in, this little small Mayberry,
Right.
um, faith-based community,
Yeah,
you know,
we had the
um,
same thing.
so
So let's go back to, so you're in the house with the kids and the police show up and you're like, this is like a Star Wars, episode or something, or what in the world is going on here? And your daughter comes and says, I want my kids, and the police say, give her the kids.
yep.
Now what happens?
So and through this whole journey, I have to say that my faith carried me through. Because my faith was, what needs to be brought to light will be brought to light. And so I prayed for the best. I was counseling with her at that time. I was taking her to counseling appointments. We were counseling together. I wanted to help her be the best mom that she could. It wasn't at that point that I wanted the kids back. It was that I didn't know who she was going with. He turned out to be a pretty decent guy. Had a job. He had custody of his own kids. My 3-year-old had a ball with his kids, and I was learning all that. But then, as bipolar will be bipolar, there was an incident and the police were called. And they called me and asked me to come and help with the situation. And so we did. We went over there. I urged her to let me take the children out of that atmosphere and what was going on right now. Sirens, flashers, the whole gamut.
Wow.
And she kept saying to me, no, you won't give them back. And she says, you want my kids. And I said, how about, I sat with her for a long time. And I said, how about if we call the counselor? That was something that popped into my head. How about if we call the counselor? So I called the counselor. The counselor eventually urged her to let me take the kids. So that was when we got the children. We still didn't go into a guardianship right away because I was still working with her in a counseling session. And then she ended up going back to Florida, and the kids were with us. And that was the time where we said, we've given her a fair amount of time to come back and be a mom, and we would help support her. But there would be rules, that she would have to follow, and guidelines. But that just didn't happen. So we moved forward with the guardianship and I think it was 2004. It was like a year and a half span in between when we took the kids from that incident. And yeah, and that wasn't the only time she came back and got the kids. She came up when she was with us. She said she was going back to Florida because she got mad at us. And she said she was taking the kids with her. And I said, no, you can't take the kids with you. And she was going back with the person who she kept leaving all that time. And I know at that point there was drug use. And so he said he was coming, and I urged him not to come. And 22 hours later, he was in my driveway.
From Florida.
Yep.
And he was coming up to get the kids.
Yep, and to take my daughter.
Okay. And did he get the kids?
Yeah, I started, so we're going to fast forward now. He had just Richard. This was before Riley was born. He had just the little 2.5-year-old. And I got a call that my grandchild was in the hospital. And I talked to his father, and his father said, yes, he's in the hospital, and he was airlifted because he got into an adult dosage of amitriptyline, which is a psychotic or a controlled substance. He was left unattended. They think that, he could have ingested as many as 22 tablets. And so he was airlifted. And so I flew down that very day. And when I walked into the hospital, I said, I want to see a social worker and I want to talk to the doctor. Surprisingly to me, back then, I was worried about the outcome because he was put in a self-induced coma and he had wires and everything all over him. And the doctor said, oh, kids are resilient. The hospital did the right thing. He's going to be okay. And surprisingly, he was. When he came out of that coma, I asked his father if I could take him for a little while and went and stayed at my father's house. And, before he went in, he was potty trained at 2.5. And I thought, this is marvelous.
Yes.
So I thought, oh, I bet y'all that's going to go down go down.
Yeah.
And surprising to me, he was just as normal could be. Went on the potty, talked about what he wanted for lunch, everything. So thank goodness. We still don't know the effects of that because he does have other diagnoses. So
but you're praying up a storm during this whole process. Probably have the whole all your church friends praying and the neighbors and we need a miracle right now. This is my grandson's ingested these things, and I'm not there first of all. And God, if you don't show up, we are in deep weeds.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he showed up.
He did over and over again. To even think that my boss at General Motors, I called him at home on a Sunday night and said, I'm flying to Florida. I won't be there Monday. And he said, go, just go. And that's unheard of.
Right.
I was on a production line. That is just unheard of. And so, yeah. So when I say my faith carried me through, it did then, and it still does today. And I see how many times he's gone before me, and he's been my rear guard. So that's an important part of my journey.
And mine too. I just, my wife and I have said many, many times, if we didn't have our faith, where would we be? Mm-hmm. And many folks on our program have said the same thing. And we're in a culture right now that does not stress relationships of faith, and everybody's concerned about imposing their view on others. But you need to have some faith to get through something like this, because there's so much out of your control. And that doesn't mean you have to go to church with me, although you're more than welcome. But that you've got to be anchored in something, because a lot of what goes on is something you never planned for. Right, Debbie? You never, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think this was going to happen? Nope. And here we are. And I've heard one person say, God isn't necessarily interested in our comfort, but in our character. And there's a much more comfortable way this could have gone, but you're testifying today that the importance of having a faith-based relationship and in the grand family scheme of things, and how it's just an anchor in times of trouble. Correct?
Yep. Absolutely.
So I may take an offering now. No, we're not going to take an offering. So how did things end up with our after this hospital encounter?
Yeah, so of course, I tried to take the little Richard home with me at that time, and my story's kind of backing up because this was before my daughter came to live with us and had the baby with us. So my story is going back and forth, but I tried I had talked to an attorney before I left. I thought I had the proper paperwork to take him home. And I told the father, we were in a public place, and I told the father that I was going to take Richard home with me for a while. And he said, over my dead body. And he picked up the child and took him out of the high chair and was going to leave the restaurant. And I said, he's taking the child. And everybody stormed him and stopped him because I think they thought he was going to kidnap my grandson. Yeah. It was quite the thing. And again, the police came. They said, you'll have to, this paperwork doesn't suffice. He said, you're going to have to go to Orange County, administrator's office and get the proper paperwork in the morning if you're going to take him. And so I came home without him. But then I called my daughter because my daughter was with someone else at the time. And I said, you need to go back and you need to get your son. And I helped her do that because and how that even happened, because she had abandoned him with the father. And so I did convince her to go back, and she did get him. And because she was the mother, this is unreal to me. You can abandon your child, but if you're the mother, you can go back and you can get him no matter what because you're the mother.
Wow.
That just kind of totally shocked me.
Right.
But that did happen. And then she was in this relationship. She got pregnant again. It was going good for a while. Then the bipolar reared its ugly head, and he asked her to leave. So instead of going down, we thought she was going to get married, and my daughter and my husband were going to go down and help her plan for the wedding. And instead they went down with a little U-Haul and brought her home.
Wow.
And that's when she, back to the original story, that's when the kids were both in our home. The second child was born in our home. And then she was a decent mom for 6 months under our guardians. And then things started to fall apart.
And the kids were under 4 at that point, right? Were they They
were 3, and the baby was born in July of 2003.
But eventually you did become guardians, right?
Yep, in 2004, like I said, we gave her a year and a half to try to help her and decide what she wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, we gave her every option possible. We will take care of your kids for you. We will, if that's the lifestyle you want to live, we're okay with that. You can go. We love you, but we can't, only you can change yourself or what you want to do. And so we're just going to focus on the kids. So, then again, we, that's back to the story where we, had her, gave her a place to go for a couple of weeks. She found the boyfriend, and then both of the children came back to us. And we gave her a year and a half from that point. And then we decided we were going to took the guardianship, and then gave her another almost 4 years before we decided we would get an attorney and either have her rights terminated. Father was, I believe, in prison, so one father was. Okay. The other father, once we decided to file for getting full custody of the children, the other dad in Florida did come up and at the court hearing had retained an attorney here and said that he thought that he wanted to take Riley, the youngest one, our youngest daughter. And that never panned out. But we were hanging in limbo for 3 or 4 years. Yeah. But I say, and I also, back to back to, deciding to get an attorney, we retained an attorney, and I talked to my daughter when, we were, I was telling her what this was going to look like. And I told her, I love you too much to have to go on a stand and tell, people in this trial that you would be an unfit mother. Because I said, I don't want to recall all the things that I've had to document over the years, because I documented everything because I had to have proof. I was a CASA, I was a court-appointed special advocate at the time, and I knew you don't come in with hearsay. You better have facts, and you
100%.
better be able to back it up, or don't ever put it in your report. And you'll get chewed up and spit out by a defense attorney. So I told her that, and she had a court-appointed attorney. She went in the conference room with a court-appointed attorney, and she came back, and I could see she was angry. She goes, I did it. And she had signed the paper to terminate her own parental rights.
Wow. That's
So
a miracle.
yeah. I mean, because I really thought we were going to go to trial.
Yeah.
So then that's when the other dad said, well, I'll take custody of Riley. He came up 3 or 4 months. He's undecided. We're not hearing anything. Again, I can't stress to people in grand families, I feel your pain and stress of living in limbo and the uncertainty. I call it, it's the worst uncertainty you've ever had in your life.
100%.
Because you're talking about children's lives.
Yep.
And you are hanging in limbo, and you don't have a crystal ball to know what's going to happen. And that's why I think, we cling so hard to our faith, and knew that even if things didn't go the way that we wanted them to go, we still knew that that was in God's plan, and that he would protect those children.
Absolutely. And Debbie, not only are you hanging in limbo, until you have that guardianship papers, all too well, like we do, you can't even find out what the kid's homework is. You can't even talk to the teacher. You can't even advocate for the administrator at the front desk of the elementary school unless you have that power of attorney. And it's the last place you want to go against your own kids, but it's the first place you should go. You've got to get that power of attorney in place, and the guardianship all buttoned up, or you really can't be the advocate for your kids. But what I would like to do, Debbie Frisbie, is I would like us to maybe put a pause on our story today, since we have discussed how you got here, and then let's come back next week and talk about how you became an advocate and what that role has meant for the folks of Michigan, and just hear your heart for grand families. So could we do that? Because this has been absolutely terrific. My producer's already doing cartwheels. I know he's loving this. And but let's come back and talk about your role as advocate for Michigan families. But thank you so much for being our guest here on It's a Grand Life. And those of you who you want to find out about advocacy, join us next week for part 2 of Debbie Frisbie on It's a Grand Life. Thank you for joining us today for It's a Grand Life. It's a Grand Life provides vital content, regulatory updates, and subject matter experts that are committed to supporting the 2.4 million kids and their caregivers from every neighborhood, every city, every tribe and territory nationwide. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. Every new subscriber and review helps us reach others that need assistance. As caregivers, we are united in purpose. We are driven by hope while providing strength for today and hope for tomorrow. We are truly making a difference while living the grand life. If you have a suggestion for a future episode, please reach out to us. But we'll see you next time for another It's a Grand Life. Thank you for joining us.